guys, it's Danny Mosca, otherwise known as Psycadillo, and today I have a cosplay next to me that's a little different from what I usually do. So about a month ago I was contacted by Netflix South Africa about an upcoming show called Jupiter's Legacy. The show itself is pretty cool, but if you don't want to take my word for it, you should probably check out the review that I did over on my fiance's channel with them. I'll have it pop up above and link it down below if you're keen. Netflix South Africa was kind enough to send me a pre-screener, which is where I kind of got to suss out which character I liked the most, and I ended up going with Grace Sampson, or Lady Liberty. Lady Liberty, for me, was a super easy choice because not only is she the most badass character in the entire series, but she's such a perfect example of a strong, powerful woman, and that's the kind of stuff that I like to cosplay with. This cosplay was actually way out of my comfort zone because I usually work with foam and do a lot of bulkier foam armor sets, but this is almost completely sewing, which is something I do enjoy, but I'm glad I got the opportunity to hone it in a little bit more. So the costume is extremely form-fitting. Because the costume is so form-fitting, I actually had to go through a lot more prep time with this costume than I usually would. Because I'm a lot smaller and I'm differently proportioned to most standard dressmaking dolls or mannequins. So I actually had to make my own duct tape mannequin. And that was a mission and a half. We actually ended up cling wrapping me and wrapping me in duct tape to make the actual mannequin that this sits on, and from that I was able to wrap that in further cling wrap and duct tape and pattern out everything onto the mannequin itself to try and get it as close to my measurements as humanly possible. So because the costume is made completely out of fabric, that was a bit of a mission because I think what most people don't realize about this costume is there are so many different seams that make up this entire thing. And just not only getting that right, but sewing it together was a mission. And finding the fabrics in this country was way more difficult than I anticipated. I think I ended up going to about 2 or 3 different stores just to find the right shade of teal, the right shade of blue, and obviously white is white. This costume was also exciting for a number of other reasons, one of which was it was the first thing I sewed with a brand new sewing machine that I was able to buy. I got myself a heavy-duty sewing machine, which is amazing because I put my mom's old Elna through the most trying to make all of my costumes. So this was a super exciting and kind of milestone cosplay for me. Starting from the top, Lady Liberty has a ton of gold trim around the neckline of her costume as well as the shoulder area and the collarbone area. So that was very interesting to do because it's quite difficult to find gold vinyl or gold stretch or anything in this country. So finding this was extremely difficult. That was then sewn onto a bunch of different panels that make up the shoulder area because, once again, what most people might not realize is that every seam almost connects into one another. So sewing everything so that it lined up was a bit of a mission. And then moving on to the cape. This was my first time making a cape for anything, and no one warned me about how hard that is. Capes are extremely difficult to do because of all the draping and how everything sits, and not to mention that this cape in particular has pleats going all over it. So this was probably actually one of the most difficult parts of the costume to just do by myself and by hand. So this is one of, I think, the most striking pieces of the costume purely because it's so shiny, it's so massive, and it is so detailed. So this is made completely out of 2mm EVA foam, just stacked on top of one another. Same goes for this. And I think one of the most interesting parts of the costume is actually how detachable it is. Because this is such a form-fitting costume and has to stretch when coming on, when being put on and taken off me, I couldn't have these pieces permanently fixed onto the chest and onto the rest of the costume, just because the foam would crack. The foam would crack. Sorry. Just because the foam would crack and it would break, and so in order to keep everything intact and be able to wear this more than once, everything is actually connected via the word I can't do. Velcro.
Velcro.
It's all connected with Velcro.
No, but say it properly.
Okay. It's all connected with Velcro.
I love you.
Cool, moving on to the midsection of the cosplay. So these detail pieces that sit on the sides and on the ribcage are made out of 2mm foam. This was tricky because these pieces get the most wear and tear out of your body as you're moving and as you're taking it on and off. So I usually stick with Plastidip when priming my foam, but Plastidip is prone to cracking, and when stacking layers of foam on top of one another, it gets a bit dicey because the foam gets more rigid and doesn't have enough flexibility in it. So I committed one of the cosplay sins, and I actually didn't prime these side pieces. This is purely white foam on its own. And then I have 2 other detail pieces on the side, also pretty much done the exact same way with the exception of the gold. And sticking these was a bit of a nightmare because I couldn't figure out how to get a proper bond onto the material and still leave it flexible. So I used spray adhesive for it, and it actually turned out a lot better than I expected. Is it a permanent bond? Not really, but it does help when getting in and out of the suit because I can constantly readjust where it's supposed to be. The belt buckle, or whatever it's supposed to be, is one of my favorite parts of the cosplay. It has the 2 L's on it for Lady Liberty, and that is also connected via Velcro. I'm gonna just destroy the cosplay a little bit. So it just attaches on and off just so I don't destroy it in transit, when wearing it, all that jazz. I have no idea if that's actually where it should be, but we're moving on. So the sleeves themselves were actually a nightmare because this is one of the first times that I've sewn sleeves, and they've broken up into so many different panels and pieces, and everything interconnects in a really, really intense and detailed way. The sleeves also have some foam detail pieces on them that provide a nice little bracelet for elegance. But yeah, patterning these sleeves out and actually getting them to fit my arm, because when making this mannequin, it actually ended up being slightly more thick than I was. So I had to deal with the bagginess of the sleeves, and I had to try to eliminate that without losing any of the different, like, I don't know, geometric sections of this arm. So they were an absolute nightmare. Another problem area that I had with this cosplay, and I don't have them right here, was actually the gloves. So I don't know if I just cannot grasp the concept of a glove, but I really struggled to pattern my own gloves, and those were a particular challenge, as well as having them connected to the arms and not being able to use my phone when traveling around and going on shoots and stuff like that. So I actually decided to make them detachable despite them actually being part of the bodysuit. Because of these little arm bracelet detail things, it actually makes it super, super easy to conceal the fact that the gloves and the sleeves are 2 different pieces. So if you're looking for something that is super easy to wear at conventions and you want the ability to use your phone maybe, I would actually suggest making this cosplay in like 2 sections in terms of the arm pieces. So gloves and sleeves. Just wanted to extend a big thank you to Netflix for partnering with me and giving me the opportunity to create such an incredible cosplay from a character that I love and adore. And another thank you to my incredible photographer Ash, who I wouldn't have been able to get the amazing photos of this cosplay without him. If you're interested in seeing those photos, you can check them out on my Instagram and his Instagram. I'll link both below. So thanks guys for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll check you out in another cosplay breakdown.